imagining a family as a collection of individuals or a springboard for individual success, you think about family as a vehicle through which you live life. And
welcome to the 2 Cent Dad podcast, where we interview dads to discuss their journeys of intentional fatherhood while doing work they care about and living a life of purpose. I'm your host, Mike Sudik. When you think about families, do you think about a nest or do you think about a multi-generational family that you're contributing to a legacy? Most Western families think about a nest and they think about getting the kids out of the nest. And my guest today, Jeremy Pryor, who runs familyteams.com, really flips that on its head. And instead, he talks about a multi-generational family and how we should view families differently and how the Western view of family has really messed up so many fundamental things in how we raise our kids, how we talk about family, and how we create multi-generational families that love each other and actually invest in the generations to come. And so real excited to have Jeremy Pryor on today's podcast, and he's really going to challenge a lot of your thinking, and let's jump right into the episode. Well, today on the podcast, we have Jeremy Pryor, who's the founder of Family Teams. You can find them at familyteams.com. He's also a father of 5, I think just 5, right? They're doing a really cool thing where they're working with teams to build family teams, and he's going to talk all about that in today's show. But really a cool movement to counter kind of where family finds itself in today's culture. And I'm excited to talk about that, talk a little bit about some of your house church initiatives too, Jeremy. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh man, thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate being here. Love talking about this stuff.
Yeah. And I recently listened to a podcast of yours where you're talking a little bit about this, and I actually sent it to my wife, and I was like, I got to have this guy on the show. So she was excited. So she had a bunch of questions that she sent to me before this call. But I wanted you to maybe start off like the family team side of things, and what is family teams? What's a family team? What is that about? And how did that evolve and come to be?
Yeah, basically it's a philosophy of family where instead of basically imagining a family as a collection of individuals or a springboard for individual success, you think about family as a vehicle through which you live life, and your family is your team. And so how it happened was I grew up in a region in the Seattle area where there was just so much brokenness that I saw in families, and it looked like an experiment that had just gone off the rails. Like, so much divorce, so much suffering happening with men and women, with children especially. I was youth pastor for a number of years there as well, and just saw, as we were working with kids, just such devastation. And I honestly really lost any optimism or hope that family was like a really positive thing. It's kind of, I was probably just annoyed when people talk about, like, I really wanted to follow the Lord. I really wanted to, understand what it's like to being part of God's kingdom, but how family just looked like it was, really just an idea that had somehow expired or something.
So you weren't married at that time?
No, I was single.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I was single. I was excited about getting married. There was a lot of, benefits to being married that as a Christian you can imagine, but you don't have to have kids, right? If you do, you can really minimize the number or space them out, or make sure they don't interfere with your life, or just being concerned in general about like how whether or not that even bring kids into this world is a really positive thing. I mean, these are all deep questions I was asking as I was watching a lot of my friends choose to abandon, some choose to abandon having kids and just like, let's have pets, like let's just live downtown, let's have let's really think about like crafting a lifestyle that we really want, and really questioning whether or not it was smart to bring children into that equation. So I was really
this is how many years ago? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. This is what year?
Yeah, this was the mid and late 90s. Yeah, this was like 25, almost 30 years ago. Yeah, it's gotten a lot worse in a lot of ways. Yeah. So, but we and so that was kind of where I was at, and then I just I was doing a semester abroad in Jerusalem, and so I was just there to learn Hebrew. I wasn't really there to have any kind of cultural experience, but I just kept seeing men and children like everywhere, like on the plane, and just them playing, and there was one day where I was minding my own business, sitting, I think next to one of the walls in Jerusalem, because our school was right, it was right next to the old city, and I watched this group of dads like pushing strollers with all these little kids in tow, kind of like what I'd seen mommy brigades before, but I'd never seen a daddy brigade. And I was like, what is this? Like, why are these men? And I saw this with, I had some friendships with, some Arab men as well that lived in the old city, and all they want to talk about was their kids. I mean, it was just like, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, it was such a contrast to go from a place where men in particular, but I would say just culture was just really, really not excited to talk. Let's talk about work. Let's talk about creative hobbies. Let's talk about lifestyle design. Kids, that's not something we were excited about. To a culture where everyone wanted to talk about kids, especially the men. The men especially want to talk about kids. I was like, where did this come from? So I started asking them questions, and kind of being a little bit of a cultural, like archaeologist, like trying to dig up like what are the ideas, where do they come from, and man, I was just shocked how different they thought about family. Like the ideas they had about family were different. And so I started to try to understand, okay, what are they saying family is, and what do we say family is? And to me, as I started to try to bring it down into a language I could understand from even my cultural perspective, the simplest way to describe it was that, men in the Western culture, or, men and women, and the more Western they are, the more they tend to think about family like a nest, like the nest is the perfect metaphor for the Western family. You nurture the chickies for a while, you push them out of the nest, they fly away, it all starts over again, and that kind of family, that springboard for the individual success, it kind of resets every generation. And you don't really know who your great grandparents are. You'd have a really hard time naming them because they're not really relevant to your life, like because we reset every generation. Like that's how we think about family. And to me, I thought everyone thought about family that way. Like I never even heard of another way to think about family. And here I was in a culture, I'm like, what do these guys say? And I think the best way that I could sum up very, very succinctly how these Jewish and Arab fathers thought about family was a multi-generational team on mission. So they would think about, they primarily saw family as a multi-generational, like they were very connected to, their ancestors. They really saw family as a group that continued to work together into adulthood, and throughout their life. And then if they were to take on things, whether it's like a religious thing, where like or a business thing, their first group they would pull to accomplish a mission was their family team. And if you ask them where this came from, both Arabs and Jews talk about Abraham like all the time when it comes to being fatherhood. Father Abraham, Father Abraham. In the New Testament, Jesus, when he was telling the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, he called Father Abraham multiple times. Paul refers to Abraham this way in the epistles. I'd never thought about this. In fact, I had studied Abraham in seminary specifically, and we had only talked about Abraham as a man of faith because we all assumed, I certainly assumed, that his vision for fatherhood was just a cultural artifact, right? He was obsessed with descendants. I mean, if you ever read the book of Genesis, Abraham was like, oh, God, give me descendants like the stars, give it, what can you give me, God? What can you give me? I don't even have a son. Like this sounds, very Middle Eastern. That's the way Abraham thought. And now I've started to understand why. Like if this is what family is, if we're stewarding a multi-generational line and we get to work together across generations and for our whole lives, and the family is the team through which we live life, and that when we think about mission, we think about whatever those things we want to accomplish in life, whatever our callings or assignments, as things given to the family and not to the individual. Now, all of a sudden, especially as a man, I get super passionate about family. And so I just had a incredibly hard, I would say, transition, like very fast. Like I went from, I don't know if I want to have kids to, oh my gosh, when can I have kids? And that's why I think ideas matter. And what a lot of Christians say, and this is what I grew up with, focus on the family and other ministries, really were teaching that what was wrong with the family is that we just need to teach dads to love their kids more, to be more present, to focus on their family more. Those are symptoms of a deeper problem. It's not that, and what I learned in living in the Middle East, it's not that these Middle Eastern men were less loving than my friends in Seattle, that were Christians. It wasn't that. They thought about family differently. And so my question was, what would happen if a Western father started thinking about family the way that Middle Eastern fathers thought about family? And that's what family, I did that. It had a massive impact. I suddenly started valuing and seeing the world differently. It's just a very different way to see the world.
So that's a great story. I think that it's spot on, and it's interesting that you had that experience like 20-something years ago, in the mid to late 90s, because like you said earlier, it's kind of just gotten worse, right? I would have thought you would have told that story that happened just like a few years ago, right? And my question is, like, what why do you think that resonates? You said with the focus on the family, they're saying you just need to love or be more present with your family. Why does it resonate more? Why was that so impactful for you to see that as a team and as kind of a mission, as a man specifically and a father?
Right.
Why did that resonate so much more? And then as you've kind of done your work with this family teams initiative and all of that, how have you seen that play out? Maybe seen those light bulbs go off. And then I want to talk about a little bit how you fulfill that, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I think that that kind of focus on the family, and it's not to pick on them. There's every Christian ministry in the Protestant Western world, I would say, all were attempting to figure out. They all saw the problem with family, but I think their solution was that to make fathers into good mothers. And I really think James Dobson typified this. He was a psychologist. He was a very nurturing man. And so I think that there's a small percentage of men who really resonate with that message. They always wanted to have kids. They can't wait to have kids. They want to nurture kids. Like, yes, there are men who have that. But I would say that the majority of men want to build things that last. Yeah. Like they want to lead teams. Like the reason why men go into the military, the reason why men love sports, there's something different about men. And so when you're telling men that in order for you to build a good family, you need to become more nurturing, better at building a nest. Like I said, 10, 15% of men are going to be, okay, well, I think I really would love that. I would have loved to have kids. But the vast majority of men will say, that's okay. If I have to do that to do my duty, I'll do my best. I'll try to stick with that. But then I'm going to go find my teamness somewhere else. Like I'm going to build things in work. I'll build things in my hobbies. I'll, whatever. So that's what I think happened. And what I noticed in the Middle East was that it was the opposite there. Like the men in the Middle East were very aware that when you're building a family, you're building something. In fact, to them, it's the most lasting team you could ever build. And so it was really weird to blow up that team that had been handed to you by your grandfather and your father, and you're having it for a certain period of time, and then you're going to pass on to your children and your grandchildren. That is so much more meaningful than anything I could build at work or any kind of sports team I could participate in. And so that's where I feel like really and this is a really weird thing to say, but I don't think Western men in particular even know what family is. I think that they are actually confused. And that's very strange because if there's anything people feel like they're an expert at, it's the definition of family. We all were raised in families. So it's very counterintuitive to challenge somebody's, underlying definition of a family. What is a family? But I personally realized I didn't know what it was until I had this experience. And so when I started to see family differently, and I think that one of the reasons why I think we can, at least as believers, we can understand, I would say, like an original definition of family, because the scriptures actually give us a revelation of what that is in the first chapter of Genesis. I mean, God actually gives us a definition. He says to the first family, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and rule." In other words, he had a massive multi-generational task to bring the presence of God and the order of this garden into the rest of creation, into this kind of chaotic, the rest of all that created order. And in order to do that, he decided not to start a business, not to build a government, but to create a family and give them a mission, and a mission that could only be accomplished multi-generationally because they couldn't do it in one generation, and he gave it to the whole family as a team. And so I think right in Genesis 1, you have the definition of family as a multi-generational team on mission. So I don't think that we need to be confused about the definition of family, but I do think we've been, and this definition of family as a springboard for individual success or as a nest that sort of self-destructs, that's a very
when you put it that way, it's kind of funny, but that's kind of what it is like, like that's how it's lived out, right? It's like you empty the nest and you just self-destruct, and you've launched these people out of the world.
Right. We have a nest right now on our porch, and it was really fun watching the birds, raise their chickies, but it's totally empty now, and there's nobody there. And just as men, when you know that what you're building is basically going to self-destruct, and you actually know that, imagine being a man. Just picture this. So I
am a man, so I don't have to imagine being
okay,
a man.
Yeah. This won't take too much imagination for you, Mike. But anybody else out there, imagine being a man, and you are, you are being tempted to make a major mistake, let's say with your in your marriage, like you're being tempted to maybe cheat on your wife or something, and your kids are kind of getting older, maybe they're teenagers, and you're trying to decide whether or not to give in to this temptation. And that the nest that you're building with your wife is going to self-destruct, like they do after your kids grow up and all leave the nest. And you have to decide, do I resist this temptation for the sake of this nest that's going to self-destruct in a few years? Is it worth it? And obviously you have the scriptures or reasons to try to be faithful to your wife. You made a covenant, but that's a big one. But imagine somebody else who looks at it and says, do I want to destroy my primary team? Do I want to end what my grandfather and my father have given to me, and what I'm about to be able to hand to my children and my grandchildren? Is it worth indulging in this affair, for this momentary pleasure, to destroy the work of generations, not just from the past, but into the future?
Yeah.
That's a different proposition. And I think that Western men, they're only really wrestling with the first proposition, not just about affairs, but everything. Like, why would I want to work less? Why would I want to, integrate my kids more? Why would I want to train my children? Like, every time you have to make a sacrifice as a man, you are saying that there's something so valuable about this family that I'm willing to forego whatever I would naturally want in order to work on my role in this household, in this family. And we have to have a reason to do that, because that's a lot. That's asking a lot of men.
Thank you for listening to the 2 Cent Dad podcast. I wanted to take just 1 minute to tell you how this show is possible, and that is through my business, EC Group. We help software companies get more done by building them amazing developer teams. Now, those teams come alongside their in-house developers to help them build more and build faster. We are a purpose-driven company, which means that we use our profits to help support nonprofit work in the locations that we operate. We operate in the US, in Michigan, and also in Chennai, India. You can check us out at teamwithec.com. Again, that's teamwithec.com. So if you're hiring software developers, or someone that's hiring software developers, check us out. Love to talk to you. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. I think that's a good perspective to have. How do you so if the emphasis in the, let's say, worldly view of families is to launch them out of the nest, and so the saying goes, you're supposed to train up adults and train them to leave or whatever. The natural negative of what you're saying would be like, oh, you're just going to coddle them because they're just part of this team. Or if there's not that impetus of like they need to be self-sufficient to get out of the nest, like to push them out, then how does that function beyond as they go and set up their own teams? Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think so. I would say most Western parents actually aim at happiness for their children. Mm-hmm. Like that is, I think, the most natural thing that they're aiming at. And so they're trying to define what that looks like, and that's a tough thing to figure out. Like, do I aim at, but I think that's natural. And I think mothers especially might struggle with, okay, is that the right thing to aim at? It's very intuitive. I think that multi-generational families aim at making their grandchildren happy. And so that really does require you to be very careful how you parent your children, because you have to prepare them to lead the next generation, to represent the family.
Yeah.
This was really well described in a parable Jesus told. One of my favorite kind of descriptions that he gave of what a son is, because usually when you talk to most Western people and you say, what comes to your mind when you think of a son? They think of like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
That's not the way Middle Eastern people think. Like they think of a grown man.
Yeah.
And because we don't actually understand what a son is. Anyway, Jesus told the story about a father who had a vineyard, and then he left, and he kept sending these tenants or these representatives or messengers to come and get the produce from these tenants, but they were selfish, and they kept beating up the various messengers and not giving them the produce. And so the father finally fed up. The father says, I'm going to send my son. They will respect my son. That's a son.
Yeah.
Like he's coming in the full power and representation of the Father. And so
Yeah.
to your question, when you were raising a son or a daughter, like those are not children. Those are the future leaders of the family, right? They're and so if you have that vision, to coddle your children, to endlessly aim at their happiness, those things really do destroy the next generation. But we do have to have a vision that allows us to really, parent and raise our children to be strong for what they're going to what their responsibilities are going to look like in the future, to carry on and to expand the family.
Yeah. No, this is getting me amped up, man. I'm excited. That's getting me excited about my role in that. So what you I wanted to go down the kind of tangent of without a biblical worldview, what's the purpose of a family? Because there's a narrative out there, especially that's I think tied to kind of like climate change. Like what are you doing? Like I have 5 kids, and people are like, I think some people could say, oh, there's already enough people in the world. What are you doing? And there's kind of this outlook that I guess it's more of a worldview. And so how is that addressed? I mean, apart from a biblical worldview, you can't really address it, but it's so prevalent, the narrative, the thinking, that worldview in the world today, which is it's a very pessimistic, like sad, depressed worldview, because it's like people are having, oh, you should just have a pet, or like a pet is the same, like dog dad. When you see like someone that's like a dog dad, like it's just like the epitome of the brokenness of what's going on in the world. I guess I shouldn't say that too, like against anyone, but I don't know.
That's right. Well, this is where I think people have to understand that worldviews and the way to really understand meaning is to try to understand how the story ends, right?
Yeah.
And if the story ends with the earth kind of crispifying because of just eventually we just deplete all the resources, then of course that idea that come be as gentle as possible, don't reproduce, don't consume, and then try to leave the planet with as little impact as possible, and so having children just sort of perpetuates the disease that human beings are on the planet. Yeah, of course, believing that's the end of the story is going to really implicate your idea of family. And humanity as a whole. And so I think that our story in the scriptures, ends in a wedding feast. We are heading for a table where we're going to sit around our Father's table, and we're going to be united with Jesus forever, and be in the New Jerusalem, and be in this perfect garden city where nature and creativity and innovation and all of these things are perfectly intertwined. And so all of that picture of the New Jerusalem, and our family spends a week every year just celebrating and talking and telling stories and studying the parts of the scripture, because I do think we need to really be aware of what that story is, and that the families of the earth are preserved. And even there's this really amazing verse in Micah where it describes at the end where in the latter days when the Torah of the Lord is like descending from Mount Zion, and then it ends with the words, every man will sit under his own fig tree and under his own vine, and no one will make them afraid. Which was this was just absolutely massively inspiring to the founding fathers of America. I think George Washington, this was like maybe his last speech. He quoted those words. Like the idea that eventually what we're aiming at is our families, having this flourishing within the borders of our households, where the produce of the goodness of the household is there, Again, around a family table. Probably my favorite passage in the whole Bible about sort of the celebration of the meaning of life is in Psalm 128, where it describes, may you be, at your table with your children's children. May your wife be like a fruitful vine. May your sons be like olive shoots. Thus is the man blessed who fears the Lord. And so I do think we need to inspire one another as men in particular, and fire each other with this vision, about, what I want for you, Mike, is that someday you're going to be 85 years old and you're going to see your children and your grandchildren around this massive table. You're going to see the legacy of generations, and you're going to be able to not contain the incredible meaning that you're going to feel in that moment about what your life really represents, and that your life is going to permeate what you and your wife have done, is going to permeate through generations. And that's going to culminate in the kingdom of God, where you're all going to be together. Like these are just different stories. And so we can pick, what you believe is true about the end of the story, and that's going to have radically different impact on the way that you choose to have children and raise families.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you do that, Jeremy. Tell me about like what Family Teams does in terms of like the training, the equipping to give those light bulb moments like you had in the Middle East, and then to take that spark and that inspiration and then equip, I think especially fathers, but also mothers and children to fulfill that family team mission.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, first of all, these kind of conversations is a big part. We're just trying to help people understand that the nest and the team are not the same, and that you get to choose. It's a free country. If you want to be a nest, if you want to build a nest, go for it. But I think that we're seeing demonstrated that is a really broken idea. It's a very recent idea, and it's very broken, especially for men. So once you choose, if you do choose to say, okay, well, I want to build a multi-generational team on mission, the next problem you're going to run into is that you're going to open your toolbox for how to build your family, and it's going to be empty. Yeah. Because every single tool in our culture is designed around the nest, is designed to really help flourish the individuals of the family. And so sports, schools, churches, shopping, everything, TV shows and channels, and everyone now has their own little, avatar on their Netflix account. Like everything is separated by the individual. Everything is to basically deliver to the individual exactly what they want to consume. Nothing's really designed for the family. How many sports are designed for the family as a whole, to stay together and to work together? Like that doesn't exist really in our culture, which is strange because, again, if you decide to be a family team, then you need tools to build a family team. Like you can't, and if you're going to be absolutely immersed in a culture that's going to assume that we're going to separate the family into its individual units every time you step out of the house, or maybe even when you step into the house, that is a disaster for a family team. And so we start to equip, families with just loading up the tools. We've got tons of tools. And so, one of them, like I just described, is crafting a multi-generational family meal where you get to experience your family nest, where once a week you don't have anywhere to go. This isn't the typical Western family dinner where we're, weekday dinner where we're all sort of, catching up on the day before we all blast out into our individual activities again. Like we're just saying, no, once a week, stop, like be a family. Like don't have anywhere better to go or anything else to do as an individual. Mm-hmm. Like have the father sit at the head of the table, have everyone be their family role. Like bless the sons, bless the daughter. And so we learn this from Jewish families because Jewish families have this just magical Shabbat dinner that they do on Friday nights, which, has allowed them to continue to think multi-generationally in the face of Western civilization, which is really, that's why I kind of go to that because, I don't want you guys to like just hear, oh, here's an idea I dreamed up yesterday. This has been working to keep families thinking multi-generationally for thousands of years. And so I think that's the number one tool is you actually have to craft a meal and you have to learn how to steward the table if you're going to be a multi-generational family. And so I wanted to create a meal in which my children, as they started having kids, couldn't imagine not being there. Like, oh my gosh, they know exactly where they belong.
Yeah.
There's a place where they just feel like, wow, I love being a son. I love being a daughter. I love being a part of this family. That's just one example.
Which I think that's like, the tone is set from the top down, right? I mean, it's like if the parents aren't acting like they want to be there, obviously the kids aren't going to want to be there, right? So
Exactly.
that's a huge deal in terms of just the hierarchy and the with the parents having the right vision and outlook around the family, as opposed to like, oh, just can't wait till they can leave the nest kind of thing.
Exactly. Yes, totally. Yeah. As a father, you have to understand, yeah, that's why, like, for me, I kind of want to always start by talking to dads, because if they
Yeah,
fall in love with the family, then I think it'll be infectious to the whole family.
yeah,
If they are really annoyed by their children and by their family, which I understand why you would be, if your vision, is typical Western, like I said, I share that 100%. I'm not a kid person. I'm not a nurturing person. Those are not my natural instincts. So there's nothing about the Western family that particularly feels like it's something that just attracts me. But
hmm
this idea of building a multi-generational team, I'm all in. And
yeah,
so that really then helps me to fall in love with my family, my kids, and love them as individuals and as a team properly. But I had to find, and I think part of this is like your own identity as a father. You have to find that spot in your heart. There's a place in your
yeah,
heart that has to wake up. Like, you have been handed something, and it used to be our fathers and grandfathers used to wake this up inside of us, just seeing how much they love their families, seeing. But if your dad abandoned your family, if your dad was annoyed and, like, was really caught up in work all the time, this is going to be a major transition for you, because you will not have seen modeled for you a fatherhood in that kind of passion for fatherhood. And that's why when I saw these multi-generation, or these Middle Eastern fathers, I just was so blessed, because their passionate love for family was just contagious. And so we can create that. Like, you can get around dads, today that have this love and this heart, but you have to wake that part of you up.
yeah. What are you seeing out there? Like, and you guys are doing like events and stuff like that. I know you have a hard stop here pretty soon, but what there's enormous cultural headwinds. You've already talked about to this type of thing, but this is a very countercultural thing. There's so many things that are coming against it. What are you seeing? That to me, I assume that would be really bad, but also can be really good, because the culture then is ripe for something
Right.
that's going to come in, and the harvest kind of thing. But can you speak to that of like what are you seeing? Maybe are you guys doing events where you're talking about this and you're seeing kind of light bulbs going off, or you know
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm very happy to be a participant in the counterculture.
yeah
I'm very grateful that we live in a free country. As long as the Amish can build what they're building, which is crazy, I'm like, then there's no threat to any family building something that's different and countercultural. And so, yeah, as long as that freedom exists, then I'm so excited to be able to do this and be a part of that, because I do think then the darker things get, the worse family gets out there, the more the contrast gets clear to the next generation, and they can decide for themselves, what do we want to do? Like, yes, if you want to, have a dog, and sort of make that your experience of family, and you're not going to reproduce that idea into the next generation, I definitely think that's appropriate, and you can also choose that.
yeah
But I think the future will always belong to those who are reproducing and who are training the next generation. So, in terms of our events, yeah, basically, to us, there is this sort of two steps, and we do want to be really, really gracious with people as they kind of consider these two steps. The first is that this is a very different way to see family. So we don't want. I'm always really careful. Sometimes, we come into churches to do an event, and I try really hard to tell the leaders of the church and the people that we get to talk to, look, I mean, this is extremely different, and so to change the whole way you view family, from the way that you assumed family was, that's a huge transition. So we want to give you time and tons of grace, and say, like, this, just lay this before and see if this fires you up and gets you excited, and if this resonates, and if it does, great. Like, if it doesn't, we understand. Again, you can continue to try to find ways to try to make the way you think about family work for you. If that's possible, then go for it. But so that's the first thing, is just sort of to very carefully lay this before people, and let them choose. And then for those who choose, yes, we want to build this kind of family. We want to be a multi-generational family team. Then we do try to engage them in this process of learning tools.
Yeah.
I mean, everything from a family sport, like I described earlier, like most people haven't even thought about that. Like our family for years I love sports, but I don't want to be running my 5 kids to 5 different sports. That's so destructive. These are the best years for us to learn to be a family team. This is the only time we really have to create that foundation. And so, I'm not going to adopt the culture's vision for what individual life looks like. I'm going to go after this. We're going to go after this as a family.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for being on and just sharing your heart and it's very contagious, but it's so genuine. So thank you for packing so much value into a short time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Oh, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So people can find you mostly at familyteams.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's the best place. We're on Instagram a lot. And you can follow us there, or all of our resources are there on the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Two Cent Dad podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with another dad who you think would benefit. That's really the best thing you can do to help this show. It A, gets the word out, but B, and most importantly, it helps another father be better at his role as a father. And that's what this show, that's what this podcast, that's what the website, that's what the blog, everything exists for. So if you could, share it with another dad who would find value in it. And you can always head over to the website, 2centdad.com, the number 2centdad.com. And if you have any feedback, feel free to email me, mike@2centdad.com. I must also thank the sponsor, EC Group. If you're looking to hire software developers or you need extra development capacity, check out teamwithec.com. Thanks.